we're in that kind of weird period where all the big earnings are behind us, but we still have some interesting names, let's be honest, coming up here specifically this week. So let's kind of tee it up. What are we looking at? What are we trying to target here as far as opportunities are concerned? We also have a little bit of inflation data to come as well. So maybe let's start high level here. Give me your thoughts on the overall market, NASDAQ specifically, heading towards Wednesday on that CPI print.
So here's the thing, Brendan, once you get into this time in earnings season, we're at the point where we have a lot of these, former IPO darlings that have just gotten completely destroyed. And so, normally what I look for at this point in earnings season is for the market to pull back as these companies, don't do very well, especially in this overall macroeconomic environment. I mean, companies that are still losing money, they're just completely hosed. They're not going to be able to get funding and everything else. So when I'm looking at earnings this week, that's kind of my focus. But what's been really weird about this month in particular is normally we get a sell in May and then we have these, not great companies reporting earnings, and it helps bring the market down. But that's not happening, because what we saw with FANG earnings is that they've been really strong. AMD is still on fire, Apple is strong, Microsoft is really strong. So I think it'll be an interesting week. I will tell your traders that what you should look out for this week are tickers that have high short interest and then they end up doing well. So, if you see anything that has a short float over like 10%, and then they have some surprise number, those can make for some really good momentum plays. As far as inflation data goes, we'll see how that goes. I'm thinking, the Fed is kind of done here. So I'm hoping that the inflation data is going to come out and continue with that narrative, but we'll have to see. That will be the next big market catalyst.
Yeah, it's, let's hope. At this point, how much more could they possibly do? I was noting before the session started this morning as well, maybe you can chime in on this if you want to. Anyways, Apple, 1.5% going into today's session away from 52-week highs. So as you said, the FANG stocks definitely showing all kinds of strength here. It seems like the NASDAQ wants to do nothing but go straight up. But here we are today, basically dead flat for Apple. It's Google and it's Microsoft that are showing a little more strength.
So what I'm looking for with Apple in particular is I really want to see it get up above those August highs, because that, August and September, Apple had that really nice rally post earnings last summer quarter. And that is just a key resistance zone, okay? If we can get up above that zone, Apple could retest the high. When you look at Microsoft was able to break through the resistance zones from last August, which is just absolutely amazing. The last resistance zone Microsoft has to get up to their retesting of the previous high is going to be the high that it made, last March. And so not last March, but the year before. So when you're looking at the way that these FANG stocks are, continuing to chug along, they're the ones that they rule the market and they drive so much, the indexes, the core sectors. And so those are the stocks that I'm looking at right now to see if they can keep going. Apple's faltering a little bit, Microsoft's a little bit quiet, but then, I'm also looking at Google and Amazon, because you know why? We've had all this money coming into Apple and coming into Microsoft and coming into NVIDIA. And then you look at Google and Amazon and they're still pretty depressed compared to the other ones. And so I would love to see some more money coming in there. And I think that I have the technical setups to back that up. You're starting to see both of these stocks shifting higher. So, I did start getting long Amazon and Google as well. We're seeing a great post-earnings move in AMD. So I don't know. I've got my hopes up a little bit this year that sell in May, I'm afraid to say it out loud, that sell in May maybe won't come through because we see that strength in tech.
Yeah.
But I'm still long, and it's May 8th now. So
sell in May and buy in June. How about that? Might work a little bit better. We have this I/O event. Speaking of Apple, we have this I/O event coming up on Wednesday. Are you a Pixel person or an iPhone person?
So I had an iPhone, forever until my husband showed me the way of the Google Pixel. Right? And I'm sorry, it's better. So it was very hard to change. It was so hard, and they make it that way on purpose, right?
Yeah. So we're getting apparently we're getting a new 7A on Wednesday, and then the Fold, the Pixel Fold, is apparently a thing and coming on Wednesday as well. So yeah, maybe some more catalysts for Google coming even this week. I wanted to mention PayPal. The guys were talking about it just before we came on there. What do you think going into earnings here?
Let me look at that one. So if you look at PayPal over the last, 12 quarters, we've seen this stock only trade higher, let's see, 6 times over the last 12 quarters. If you just look at the last year, it's been a little bit more positive because you have 3 out of the last 4 quarters with PayPal trading higher post earnings. I would like to see this one come back to life, but I'm just not seeing any signs of that. If you look at the EPS numbers from last quarter, they were pretty good. They were estimated to earn 98 cents and they made $1.24. So, you had a pretty nice beat there. But even after that, it gapped up, hit resistance, and then consolidated and traded lower the rest of the quarter. If I'm going to be long a stock going into earnings, I really need to see that the previous quarter at least was a nice beat. I like to see a nice breakaway gap, and I like to see continuation. So, looking at this stock, it's a bit of a toss up here. I will say that it did get up above the 75 price point. So, it could be worse. But it has a $5.64 expected move. So, I think a best case scenario, maybe up into $80, but you have a lot of resistance there too. So with this one, I'm not going to do anything before the report. I'm going to wait and see if we get anything good out of it post report. But I mean, this stock it's not reversing the way that a lot of stocks have reversed off of the lows.
It's amazing how tight the range, just looking at that daily chart there, it's amazing how tight the range has gotten on PayPal. The other two, I guess, bigger names that are coming this week, Airbnb and then Roblox as well, which is always crazy around earnings. Here's Airbnb up 6% today, earnings later in the week.
All right, so that one actually looks really good. So this is kind of what I like to see when I'm looking at an earnings report. So let's see, last quarter, they were estimated to earn 27 cents and they made 48. So very good, it's positive, right? We had a really nice gap up. Last quarter, it gapped up 7.6%. It did come back and fill that gap. So not perfect, but you still had a nice gap up. And then I like the way that we are seeing price up above the moving averages. And we've been in a pretty decent bullish trend since it hit the low at 81. You also have a lot of consolidation there, and I do like that high volume buying coming into the name prior to the report. On this ticker, you have about a $10 expected move, and so trading at 127, you have that resistance up at 130, 140. I mean, it's possible that we get a good report and that breaks higher. Let me go ahead and check the short interest real quick. I have a short float of about 5%. That's not, as good as what I would like to see. Typically, when I have like a high volume buying coming in on a name like this, that's coming up close to those previous highs, I love to see like 10%, 15% short float, because then you can really squeeze those short sellers, but there's a little bit, so there's some there. I like Airbnb. I like the stock. I do own the stock long term. If I was forced to trade this one, I would probably just have to go with Vol Crush, because when you look at the way that it's traded since it IPO'd, half the time on earnings it's up and half the time it's down. In order for me to make a call and say, hey, I got to go long this thing, it's got to be at least like 8 out of 12 times up, and we have to see rising EPS estimates. So I think this one's a bit of a dicey one right here, but I do like the stock, and I think I'm leaning towards the long side.
Holding up better than most, I guess, at this point is a good way to put it for Airbnb. A nice day today, for sure, trying to get above some levels. Let's wrap up with Disney, obviously a big name coming this week. The last time, it was the first report, and Bob Iger comes back, it was a little underwhelming. Wasn't much follow through as far as price action over the next couple of days, even a week or so for Disney. Not much has happened, it feels like, since then for this earnings.
So Disney's another dicey one too. I mean, when you look at the technicals though, I'm leaning towards the long side because I like the way that it's reversed off of the lows. I like the way that you have price up above the moving averages on this daily chart. I do really like, you know, the positive move that it had last quarter. I think Disney right now just has a lot of problems between all the political issues in Florida, and then, you know, place is so expensive, and you've got a high inflationary environment. You have an environment where consumers are really pulling back on their spending. You know, they do have Disney Plus, which is great. But I think that Disney, you know, is not going to do great throughout this overall, you know, slowdown due to the fact that they do have to rely on, you know, their parks and very expensive things. But all of that being said, I think that they could have a good earnings move afterwards, just because we've seen this with so many of these big companies this quarter where people expect the report to be bad. And then because it comes in better than feared, it ends up rallying, and the technicals support that. So I would actually look at this for a long, and I do own the stock on this one, and I've been planning on buying more stock in it as well, because this is a perfect example of a bear market buy company. Like, Disneyland is not going anywhere, and even though they might be having a rough time right now, they're going to be back.
It's a great point. And definitely they're not, I mean, what are they going to leave Florida? It's like, it's crazy. Some of these headlines are just absolutely crazy. Lots to come definitely this week. Great information as always. Danielle Shay, VP of Options over at Simpler Trading. A pleasure as always. Best of luck this week. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.